I'll start with my story because it defines my research agenda. Unlike those who feel a calling from birth, apparently I spent my youth dreaming of baseball. That dream ended quickly when I realized I couldn't run, throw, or hit. So maybe unlike others, this path just wasn't a natural click for me. So I tried something different. In my undergraduate years, I joined a band, and we were pretty terrible. We could only play originals because our covers were so horrible to hear. But it's there I met Al, who was our drummer. He was a social worker, and his career inspired my interest in the field. Inspired by Al, I headed to grad school for social work. It turns out he was one of the most terrible social workers you'll ever meet. But I didn't know, right? All that mattered was my heart was set on being a family therapist, and in graduate school, I even fell asleep in my policy class. I'm sure my professor was not happy, but who needs policy anyway? I was doing my counseling in community mental health. My life was set, or so I thought, and then I discovered school social work. I was fortunate to work as a school social worker for 15 years, and it became part of my identity, part of who I am, and it shapes my research agenda today. A few years ago, I was having a conversation with a colleague named the other Rob, and it sparked a major realization. As he described his parent training that he was about to go do, I felt myself completely uninspired by that work. Bored might be another word. And it was that moment I had to accept that I am not an interventionist. So once I looked past interventions, I saw a system at its breaking point. Youth mental health concerns rising, 1 in 3 students facing anxiety, 80% facing unmet mental health needs, critical shortage of staff, and something had to give. But remember, I'm still not an interventionist. And taking place in the Policy Academy revealed that state education and mental health agencies operate in silos, horizontally and vertically. Despite working in identical spaces, they speak different languages and have conflicting definitions of school-based supports. Which leads to the question, where does all of this misalignment come from? Do current policies lack the structural support for school social workers to use their skills? Or does the training pipeline fail to meet the specialized policy demands? I hope to make the case that role confusion will persist until all pillars are aligned. Go back one here. So once I zoomed out to the entire system, the confusion I felt wasn't personal, it was structural. Our own professional pillars, education, research, policy, are simply out of sync, different from district to district and school to school. So let's look at the center with roles, skills, and practices. School social workers balance mental health support with home school community across all 3 tiers of support, yet without shared definitions, professional identity stays trapped between expectations and specialized demands. We're currently the jack of all trades without clearly defined professional boundaries. The willingness to step in everywhere leaves our impact misunderstood and our specialized expertise underutilized. The question is, how can we make sure our skills and roles support effective practice? As we think about this intensive interaction or this intensive mental health support at the center, we're at a space where the kind of work we do is guided by the frameworks of our profession. Sadly, we have 2 major frameworks by the School Social Work Association of America and the National Association of Social Workers, and across these frameworks, they only share about 1/3 of skills that are deemed essential. So this misalignment creates a patchwork of roles that challenge consistent implementation. My research has found that less than 10% of school social work studies focus on the impact of school social work. So when we think about our skills, even in states like Tennessee, models like Tennessee, who has a very specific Tennessee framework for mental health, roles remain subject to local discretion, leaving practitioners struggling to define their identity. So the second pillar we're going to talk about is research. It turns out that less than 10% of school social work studies focus on outcomes or impact. When we talk about education, we're talking about how prepared are actually school social workers. So we know we're not doing the work, we're not actually researching what we're doing, and we're finding that there's a generalist effect where when school social workers don't have specialized training and they enter into the district must bear the cost of retraining them. So while school social workers rank supporting student achievement very important and most frequently performed, they report that as being the least prepared area for them. Additionally, over 40% of school social workers enter the workforce without any specialized training. And so when we think about policy, all of the things that bring this together, these are professional regulatory guidelines, establishing the legal and structural boundaries for practice. This also speaks to whether school social workers are able to meet the recommended school ratios, the student-to-school ratios. And yet, unlike other professions which have uniform standards, school social workers remain a mixture of policies with no standard certification requirements. In fact, only 32 states require a master's degree, and 15 have no degree requirement at all. And this inconsistency continues to fuel ambiguity and funding disparities. The current readiness gap shows that practice demands outpace foundational preparation. Addressing the generalist ceiling requires the systematic alignment of education, research, policy, and frameworks. And only by aligning these pillars can we address the implementation barriers and develop school social workers to be prepared to support student well-being. Thank you.